Another news headline, another scandal. State capture, Life is a Demeni, Eskom, Steinhoff. The list of people who clearly made bad decisions seems to be endless. I've often wondered whether these people could in fact distinguish between right and wrong. What would make it worse is if they knew they were doing wrong, but still decided to follow through with that course of action. As far as I understand it, acting in an ethical manner involves two things. One, being able to distinguish between right and wrong, and two, then making the right choice. I found a fairly old but still relevant presentation by Professor Shannon French that explains this in very simple terms. According to her, two components determine ethical behavior, namely moral reasoning and character. Moral reasoning is the knowing or thinking part, and character determines the doing part, making it a mind-heart combination. Moral reasoning, the knowing or thinking part, is influenced by rules. These rules come from laws, regulations, customs, and culture. On the other hand, motivation, influenced by things such as courage, integrity, justice, wisdom, benevolence, righteous anger, and honesty, drives character, the doing part. Let's take a closer look at the rules first. Two main approaches are listed when it comes to the rules. One, principle-based moral reasoning requires that the rules must be applied strictly and without exception. Immanuel Kant, a German philosopher that lived between 1724 and 1804, for example, believed that any form of lying was wrong. According to Kant, you should strictly follow the rule that states you should never, ever lie. 2. Consequential moral reasoning, on the other hand, states that you should consider the consequences of your actions when making decisions. Jeremy Bentham, an English philosopher who lived between 1748 and 1832, introduced the principle of utilitarianism, stating that you should follow the course of action that will result in the greatest good for the most people. The following example will illustrate the difference between principle-based and consequential moral reasoning. Somebody is hiding Jewish people in his attic during Nazi Germany. A Nazi officer knocks on the door and asks him or her directly, "Are you hiding Jews in your attic?" According to Kant's "you have to stick to the rules" approach, the person is not allowed to lie and has to answer yes, notwithstanding the fact that this will probably lead to his or her death and the death of the Jewish people. Another rules-based approach is divine command theory, where people are expected to strictly follow the rules and doctrines of their religion. Consequential moral reasoning says you should consider the consequences of your actions and do what will benefit the most people. This approach requires that the householder lies to the Nazi officer and answers, "No, there are no Jews in the attic," since this would be for the greater good. So when it comes to following the rules, there are basically two approaches. One, follow the rules and principles strictly without exception. Two, consider the context and the outcomes or consequences and do what benefits most of the people involved and act for the greater good. Which approach is right? Professor French seems to favor a balance between the two. You should have a situational awareness and understanding of how your decisions will impact on people and act accordingly. At the same time, the rules or principles should establish a line that you will not cross and that will stop you from rationalizing your actions by arguing that the ends justify the means. Another danger in all of this is the definition of what is good. Good can be a very vague concept, and different people could have different opinions about what is good, making this whole thing even more complex. The second component that drives ethical behavior, in addition to the rules or the knowing part, is character, the doing part. The first questions that come to mind is, can a person shape or change his own character, or is it fixed? Can circumstances determine or influence one's character? Heraclitus, a Greek philosopher that was active around 500 BCE, said, A man's character is his fate. Aristotle, another Greek philosopher active around 350 BCE, believed that character was a bundle of attributes that we work on during our lives. He stated that character consists of virtues and vices that eventually make up your identity as the result of habits that you develop during your life. Aristotle's argument goes as follows. Children are innocent and do not know right and wrong. As we grow up, we acquire the capacity to recognize vices and virtues, allowing us to choose. We can choose vice and become what Aristotle calls wicked, or we can choose to be virtuous, even if we fall prey to temptation from time to time, defined by Aristotle as weak-willed. The bottom line is, however, that we can control our development, our character, and that we are therefore responsible for our actions. Aristotle at the same time advocated a path of moderation, a golden mean. According to Aristotle, all virtues are flanked by vices. So you have vice, virtue, vice. On the one side is excess, and on the other side is deficiency. Take courage as an example. Courage, a virtue, can cause crazy behavior that could put life at risk. Excess on the one side, or cowardice, deficiency on the other side. Self-respect can, in similar vein, fit between arrogance and weakness. According to Aristotle, habits develop character. Actions performed and choices made on a day-to-day basis create character. Character is therefore the result of the things we choose to do and the things we avoid. Say somebody wants to develop courage. That person, however, regularly rationalizes acts of minor cowardice. When a situation arises that requires true courage, that person will not be able to respond accordingly, since he or she trained himself or herself over time to be a coward. Aristotle further believed that character is also molded by the people we spend time with. So, if we want to be ethical, then we should associate with ethical people. Life can be messy, and that is exactly the time that we need ethical people around us to set us straight. The same also applies if somebody else needs our guidance during such messy times. Inasmuch as we may need ethical guidance from time to time, we may also be called upon to provide ethical leadership and guidance when those close to us need it. Some questions remain. What role do emotions play in ethical decision making? Could decisions be justified as ethical if we consider the emotions of the doer at the time? How important are intentions in ethics? Can good intentions make something that is apparently bad into something good? Professor French addresses these and other issues in her presentation. I just wanted to summarize the main driving forces behind ethical behavior, namely the rules and character. You can follow her presentation by clicking on the link below. I do, however, suggest that you test your understanding of ethics by considering the case study first. Thank you, and I trust that this presentation furnished you with some additional insight into the fascinating field of ethics.